Well, hello, friends, and thank you for joining us online here again for our midweek devotions on Wednesday, July the 8th. Listen, I'm not sure what you've been doing in your life to keep from getting COVID crazy these past few months, but Wendy and I have been doing a little bit of local trail hiking. That's what we've decided to do some of, mostly climbing up some of our small New Brunswick mountains to get a different vantage point on the lay of the land. And so this weekend we actually did a little bit of that again. And while we were on one of these hikes, our adult son was with us and he spotted a small cave that went straight down through the opening in the rock at one point. And he decided to drop down into it really just to see how big the space was. He's a bit of an explorer that way, and so he did it. And I mean, as caves go, it wasn't very big, but it was big enough that when he lowered himself down through the entrance, he dropped completely out of sight. Like I was ahead of him, and when I turned around, it was almost like he hadn't even been there. And while his mother and I are standing up on the top, looking down to him in this dark hole, he said to me, purely as a question of curiosity, he said, "Dad, do you think bears would ever come into this hole?" And I mean, like I said, it was just a question, really. Obviously, there weren't any bears in there right then, so he didn't seem to be in any hurry to climb out or anything. He was just standing there in the middle of this cave, looking up through the little opening, asking his question. And I mean, the reality is, I don't know why he asked it. Like, I'm not an expert on bears. I don't have a clue whether they'd ever enter that space or not. But, you know, a dad does this. I gave it my best guess, and I said to him, "Oh, I doubt it. I can't see bears ever going down in there. The only thing I can picture you find down in that hole," I said to him, "would be snakes." And that's when he climbed back out of the opening. So the Bible verse I want to share with you this morning from Proverbs is from Proverbs chapter 10 and verse 11. And it reads like this. It says, "The words of the godly are a life-giving fountain, and the words of the wicked conceal violent intentions." Or in other words, when it comes to people, what you're able to see on the outside doesn't always tell the story of what's going on down in the inside. You don't always know what's down there. And that's not intended to be a sweeping judgment of people either. As a proverb, Solomon's really just making an observation that he's found to be true during his lifetime. He's just saying that some people's caves are a little bit riskier than others. For some people, whether it's because of the hardness of life or behavior that's been learned from previous generations, or simple greed or anger will do this, or distrust of others that's taken root and gotten a little bit out of control somewhere along the way. But like down deep inside, there's a damaged spirit that can even be threatening to the people who are around those individuals. They're life depleters, really. And then there are other people, a whole other category of people that Solomon talks about here, who may have also known some hardship in life, because no one is immune to hardship, but they've turned it a different way. They've nurtured in their lives a sense of joy and personal satisfaction, and somehow they've been able to come into a healthy perspective on what I might call a more charitable life. And on the inside, down in their cave, they have an emotional health and optimism that is encouraging and engaging for the people around them. And listen, I know this isn't rocket science. Like some of you might be like, well, yeah, there are people who are going to be healthier for other people to be around and some people who aren't. Like everybody knows that. We just deal with it. But let me ask you, how many of you, or how many people listening today, how many of you also know people who have spent so much time around life depleters that they don't seem to have the capacity to just deal with it anymore? Like, how many people have had their self-worth damaged, their confidence diminished, their personhood undervalued to the point where they're no longer living a joyful life, a purposeful life that God intended for them? Someone listening in might be in that situation right now. And if that's where you are today, here's what I want to say to you about that. A few things, really. Just briefly. Number one is that I'd like to encourage you to actively seek out people in your circle of contacts who are life-giving in the words that they use around you. And I want to be even more specific than that and say that you ought to look for people whose positivity comes directly out of a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. That's the first thing. According to Solomon here, the words of the godly are a life-giving fountain. And so you want to surround yourself with that. Part of the tiredness you're feeling right now, the lack of motivation, the lowered self-worth, are coming because you need a good long drink from that kind of life-giving fountain. So seek it out. Seek those people out. Then secondly, understanding that sometimes it might be difficult to distance yourself entirely from those whose words are life-depleting, try to look at their words from a different perspective, realizing that, to use an old cliche, it is often hurt people who hurt people. When we're able to see the brokenness that might be behind other people's hurtful words, then it can be helpful in some ways to detach ourselves from it a little bit better and remind ourselves that we don't have to own those things or let other people define for us who we are. And then finally, can I just remind you this morning that you are unbelievably loved by God? That's helpful to know it all by itself. Like, one of my favorite Bible verses on the love of God is one that I learned when I was just a boy. I actually learned a song about it, but I won't sing that for you now. But the verse is from 1 John 3:1. It says this: "See how very much our Father loves us, for he calls us his children, and that is what we are." The New International Version words it this way: "See what great love the Father has lavished on us, that we should be called children of God, and that is what we are." That's how God feels about you. It's a lavish kind of love that he has for you. And in the end, that is what defines you. It is what you are. May you live under that declaration in your life today. God bless you, everyone. Stay safe and stay faithful, and we'll see you next time.